This week on Oasis by the Sea, Pastor Keith teaches Peace During Confusion from the book of 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 1 to 6, and the book of Psalms chapter 4.
Most Christians at some point in their life experience a crisis of faith, some moment where things seem less clear and real and viable and potent than they once did. And there's several things that can cause this. An argument or a thought that unsettles us. Sometimes it's a slow drift. Sometimes it's, I'm just going to do less. Well, I really don't have time for that. No, I really don't have prime time for prayer today. Well, I haven't done any Bible study in 6 months. And suddenly what seemed really powerful and real starts to feel really distant. And we might start to think, was that real? That's another kind of crisis of faith or reason. Here's another one. Things don't go the way we think they should. That can cause a crisis of faith. Disappointment can lead to doubt. When I say that, what I mean is this. We feel like we've been doing the right thing. We feel like we've been sacrificing. We feel like we've had a good attitude, and we're doing what we're supposed to do, and we're volunteering, and we're trying really hard, and we're doing all this stuff, and we are reading our Bible, and we are trying to pray, and then this thing happens that is crushing, and maybe our instinctive reaction is, why did that happen to me? This isn't the way it's supposed to go. If I'm doing good things, I'm supposed to get good results. I'm supposed to have a better life. Things are supposed to be nice. And we can be disappointed in the outcome of our sense of trying hard. And it's funny how the one disappointing result can suck all the joy from all the rest of the successes. Has that ever happened to you? 10 things could be going super well, and then that one thing seems impossible to solve, and then that one thing sucks all the joy from the other 10 things. It's just gone. Is that just me? Am I the only one that happens to? No, I didn't think it would be. Sometimes that disappointment comes from circumstances beyond our control, usually tragedy or loss. We can feel like, God, I've raised my family in the way I should have, and we've done what I'm supposed to do, and now my child is sick, or this thing happened, or the car accident, or whatever that is. That can shake our faith. Sometimes that disappointment comes from a relationship where we feel like this has happened to us. We raised our child in the faith, teaching them about Jesus, trying to be good parents, taking them to church, and then they grow up, and why did they do that? Confusion. Broken relationships can cause doubt. Some of you have experienced far more tragedy and loss than I have, and I have no business judging those moments or pretending that I understand them. I don't. There are things that some of you have experienced that I can't pretend that I understand because I didn't live that, and I'm not trying to. In my life, my disappointments have been mostly relationship-based, not tragedy-based. And I can honestly tell you that my hardest seasons of doubt and spiritual desolation have come from broken relationships that I didn't know how to heal. I'm the guy that wants to be at peace with everybody. I really do, but sometimes I don't understand why someone is mad at me, or if I do understand, I don't always know how to fix it. To be very concrete, the church can have all kinds of positive indicators, signs of health, yet if one person is angry with me, that can make me doubt if I'm supposed to be here. That's a very real indicator of my insecurity, by the way. Nothing else. I'm just human and I have insecurities. But now, right now, until I grow more, that's still the truth. Now, I don't know to what extent you can relate to the feelings I just shared. But King David, or even before he was king, went through a very similar situation in his life. We're studying the life of David, and what we're doing is we're looking at the historical description of his life from 1 and 2 Samuel, but then we're looking at the book of Psalms to look at how David felt and how he dealt with the events of his life. The book of Psalms, if you don't know, is a song book. Songs express feelings. That's generally what they do. And David wrote a massive number of the Psalms. And so we have this incredible glimpse into the emotional life of David that we don't have of any other character in the Bible. And so we're trying to leverage that vision to understand things better. Last week we examined David's defeat of Goliath, a moment that combined God's preparation of David with God's provision during the event. And we pick up with David staying with the army instead of returning home to dad. David is about to follow up one success with many, many more. This is 1 Samuel 18 is where we're going to be today. If you didn't see up on the board, and Psalm 4, I think. 1 Samuel 18, 2 through 4. And Saul took him, David, that day, and did not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan, by the way, that's Saul's son, the crown prince, made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David with his armor, including his sword and his bow and his belt. Maybe you remember from last week, if you were here, that we'll call it modern gear. It wouldn't be modern now, but modern for the time. Gear was extremely limited in the Jewish army. There may have only been 2 sets, Saul's and Jonathan's, and Jonathan has just given his set to David. David is now the proud owner of maybe only one of 2 modern sets of equipment in the entire Jewish army. Amazing favor from Jonathan. And the friendship between Jonathan and David is often referred to in the Bible or in churches as an amazing and astounding example of good and true friendship. And here's what happens next. This is 1 Samuel 18:5. So David went out wherever Saul sent him and prospered, and Saul set him over the men of war. Now look who it was pleasing to. And it was pleasing in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. David is now the go-to warrior. It's not Saul at the front of the troops. It's not Jonathan at the front of the troops. It's David. Mission after mission, and everyone is good with this. He may be young, but he is clearly a leader. And it's all fine while they're out in the field chasing Philistines off of their property. But then it comes time to come home. And of course, it's going to have to be a welcome party, right? A parade, a celebration. An army that was both better equipped and had giants on their team has been sent packing. There must have been days for the people when it seemed like surely servanthood to the Philistines was a foregone conclusion. Surely there would have been days of fear, and now those days seem to be over. There's been this massive victory. The Philistines have been pushed back. There's got to be a party, and there's going to be. And that cheering, that victory song is going to cause some serious problems. Let's look at 1 Samuel 18:7 and the beginning of verse 8. And the women sang as they played and said, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And then Saul became very angry. Just a bit, by the way, about biblical accuracy. I believe in the absolute certainty of the accuracy of the Bible. Which means, here's what I believe. I believe that what we just read about the women singing, that's what they were singing. I really do believe the women were singing, Saul slayed his thousands, but David his 10,000s. Here's what I don't know. I don't know if the song was accurate. I don't know whether that's an accurate number of people who died, thousands and 10,000s. It's an accurate portrayal of the song. Whether the song was accurate or not, things are often exaggerated during celebrations. I don't really have a clue. The ratio seems about right, though. I mean, based on everything we've seen so far, that David, during these missions before they came home, had killed 10 times as many Philistines as Saul. That might actually be not enough. That might be an underestimate. I don't know. But the response of Saul speaks volumes about his character. Any leader who demands that they get all the praise, they get all the credit, needs their name up in lights and their lips on everybody, has serious ego problems. Last week we saw how David constantly pushed credit away from himself and toward God. David was constantly saying, the praise belongs to God. He wrote all these songs for the people to sing that never praised David, they all praised God. David was constantly pushing credit up. Saul, on the other hand, could not stand the fact that somebody's getting more attention than he is. And now suddenly Saul has a big problem. His son has sided with David. The people love David. The army loves David. Even his close servants, we read, find favor with David. They like David. Yet Saul himself hates David. And the love of all the other people surely just made it worse, right? All of these people adoring on David, loving David, only would have made him more angry, only would have made him more mad. And worse, Saul's own jealousy is going to ruin his own blessing. 2 weeks ago, we looked at how David was able to give Saul relief from an evil spirit that plagued him. David was a solution to a problem Saul couldn't solve, a big problem. Yet now Saul hates the solution. Saul now hates the blessing God sent him. God allowed him to have a relief, and now he hates that relief. And it results in a complete loss of control on the part of Saul. Let's look at 1 Samuel 18, 11 and 12a. And Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. But David escaped from his presence twice. Now Saul, different word, was afraid of David. He was angry, now he's afraid. This is not a good combination. The combination of anger and intimidation. He's trying to kill David, he can't. Saul watched this guy kill a giant. No wonder he's afraid. You realize who he just tried to kill? His best warrior by far. I'd be afraid too. And David, instead of fighting back, runs away. And we're going to see in the future David's attitude about the king and about God and God's right to decide who king was, and David never would have fought Saul. But I have to wonder if Saul now isn't a little bit worried about the fact that he's tried to kill his best warrior twice and what that best warrior might do in retaliation. Saul can't just get rid of David. David is too popular, so he appoints David to lead 1,000 soldiers, and he gets him out of the palace. And Saul's problems are Saul's fault, not David's fault. Nothing that David has done at all has earned him the attitude that Saul's giving him. This isn't David's fault. Saul's insecurity is influencing him in bad ways. But David is directly impacted by Saul's problem, right? Clearly, he escaped being pinned to the wall by a spear twice. 2 times his king tried to kill him. Let's not minimize this. Let's not skim past this. The king was someone David had served faithfully. David had played music for him in presumably fairly private settings, and he'd answered the call to deal with the giant. And all David has done is try to meet the expectations of this king. David has risked his life for this king, and now the same person that he's risked his life for is trying to kill him. I don't know if there's anyone in this room that has actually been in a situation where they felt as if another human being was genuinely trying to kill them. Maybe you have. I suspect I haven't, by the way. Despite the fact that I was in the military for 25 years, I was never in combat. I have never at any time actually felt like the person in the room with me wanted and was planning on killing me. I've never experienced that. But someone in this room might. If you have, I'll bet you'll never forget. I bet that if you've ever been in the room with another human being who was actively trying to kill you with a weapon, that you wouldn't forget that moment for the rest of your life. Why am I harping on this? Because this had to have impacted David. It had to have impacted. If we have experienced that kind of anger and threat, we may do more than just remember. We may bear permanent emotional scars. And if that person was someone we knew, someone we trusted, someone we were trying to please, then the scars are just that much worse. Even having someone threaten to kill us is a memory we might never shake. And so here's David, with the success piled on success, doing everything he should be doing. This should be the happiest time of his life, except for one thing. His king is actually attempting to kill him. Confusing at the very least. Does David, as a young man, have the emotional experience to understand what's going on? I don't know. I would certainly understand if he didn't. David is facing confusing, unfair disappointment. How easy would it have been to become fixated on this one point? I think I would be fixated on this one point. I mean, this isn't just anybody that wants to kill David, it's the king. How many ways can a king kill somebody? It would seem like a lot to me. Like it would seem like they would have many options for how to kill you. David is now a military commander. How does he know which missions are necessary and which ones are the ones his king hopes he won't survive? Is he now doubting every single mission he gets sent on? Am I doing this because it's necessary, or am I doing it because my king hopes I don't get back home? Wouldn't that be a reasonable doubt when the guy had chucked a spear at you? I think it would be. What kind of paranoia could be generated by the certain knowledge that your king has it in for you? When do you start suspecting your food or worrying about every strange shadow? I think that this could suck out every bit of joy that should have come from all of David's obedience and corresponding success. And here's the question. How is David going to keep his faith despite this very aggressive, very horrible act of King Saul? Wouldn't this be a prime moment for doubt? How can this be right when the outcome is somebody who hates me? See, isn't that a very real Christian question? How can God want me to do this? How can this be the right thing? How can God be blessing me when this person that I care about now hates me? I think that's a really real space the Christians often have to navigate. God, why protect me from a giant only to have my own king attempt to kill me twice? I personally don't claim to have ever experienced something as intense as this, but I have experienced glimmers of this, lesser versions of this, and maybe you have as well. The confusion, the hurt, the unsettling feeling, and it doesn't go away easily. And here's the thing, David will have to live with this tension for 15 years. That's the gap between the events of what we're reading right now and Saul actually dies and David becomes king. 15 years of running from his life, and it's going to get intense. He is genuinely going to be running and just fleeing everything to get away. It's going to get intense. I have a hard time handling rejection from normal, everyday people for a few weeks. I can't imagine what it was like to be personally and actively hated and hunted by the ruler of my country for 15 years. I can't even imagine that pressure. This is seriously next level. So what does David do? And here's where we're going to get to our psalm. Let's look at Psalm 4. I'm going to read the whole psalm, and then I'm going to go back and look at the verses individually, if that's okay. Here's the whole psalm. Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have relieved me in my distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. O sons of men, how long will my honor become a reproach? How long will you love what is worthless and aim at deception? But know that the Lord has set apart the godly man for himself, for the Lord hears when I call him. Tremble and do not sin. Meditate in your heart upon your bed and be still. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness and trust in the Lord. Many are saying, who will show us any good? Lift up the light of your countenance upon us, O Lord. You have put gladness in my heart, more than when their grain and new wine abound. In peace I will both lie down and sleep. For you alone, O Lord, do make me to dwell in safety. This is an incredible psalm, and now I'm going to unpack it one verse at a time. So if we can go back to verse 1, there we go, perfect. Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have relieved me in my distress, and be gracious to me and hear my prayer. David asked God to hear him. Do you ever ask God to hear you in your prayer? Or we just assume he does? Look, I know that he does. I'm fully confident that God hears me when I pray. Why does David ask God to hear him? It's because David is struggling with feeling like God hears him. That's why. And that's real. Struggling with feeling whether God hears me or not is a real feeling. Most of us have experienced that feeling. I'm praying right now, God, do you hear me? David isn't saying theologically correct things. David is saying exactly what he feels things. And he doesn't always feel like God hears him. So he says, God, hear me. I know you have in the past, and I'm going to count on that. I'm going to hang on that. I'm going to hold on to that. I don't always feel, God, like you hear me, but I know you have, and I'm hanging on to that, and I'm asking you to hear me again. There's nothing wrong with praying what you really feel. Number 2, verse 2. Here comes the confusion. O sons of men, how long will my honor become a reproach? How long will I do the right thing and then feel as if I did everything wrong? How long will I have to face this confusion of I've done all the things I was supposed to do and yet things still go bad? How long is this going to go on? I'm confused. I don't like it. It's not any fun. The people who hate me seem to love things like their own pride, which are ultimately worthless. That's what he's saying. David accurately realizes that the source of his rejection isn't an uncaring God. It's just people who don't know lies from the truth. That's the source. He realizes God is not the author of this. There are people who love what is worthless and aim at deception, and those people are hurting him. And David doesn't mistakenly blame God. He puts the blame where it belongs. These people hurt me, God. When is it going to stop? Verse 3, but know that the Lord has set apart the godly man for himself. The Lord hears when I call him. David returns to an interior place of knowing who he is and what God has called him to. See, he's feeling confused. So what does he do? He goes back to what he knows. There are things that we know that we don't always feel. And sometimes our knower needs to talk to our feeler. And so he's feeling confused. So what does he do? I know you called me. I know you belong to me. My feelings aren't working here. So I'm going to go back to what I know. I know, God, who you are and who you've called to me, that I belong to you. David reminds himself that God is still listening, even as this maniac king is chucking spears at him. Verse 4 is up here. Tremble and do not sin. Meditate in your heart upon your bed and be still. I think David is speaking to himself. David reminds himself that his ultimate responsibility is to God still, regardless of what other people do. He describes retreating to his own space, a place of privacy, his own bed, and seeking stillness. Meditating in this case does not mean the Middle Eastern kind of internal meditation. Meditation, this word means to chew like a cow chews its grass. To work on believing and thinking and remembering what God said, and to chew it again, and to chew it again, and to chew it again, and to dwell on it and continue munching it until it's real, and to chew on it for as long as it takes. Verse 5, offer the sacrifices of righteousness and trust in the Lord. David knew that what God wanted far more than burnt offerings on an altar was the righteousness of David's character. David knew that he needed to obey to please God. Even if people misunderstood or were threatened by his success, he puts his trust in God for this journey of righteousness. Verse 6, many are saying, who will show us any good? Lift up the light of your countenance upon us, O Lord. David acknowledges the need for an example to the people. And how many kings have put themselves up as the example? But David doesn't do that. David says, the people need an example of perfection. God, would you give it to us? Would you be the example of perfection we need? Would you lift yourself up? I don't deserve it. It doesn't matter whether I'm pre-king or am king. Doesn't matter where I am in my life. God, we need you to lift your countenance up so that we can all see you. Once again, David does this thing every time where instead of elevating himself, he elevates God. He doesn't try to pretend that he is somehow perfect or that he's the good example. He calls upon God to show himself instead. Verse 7, you have put gladness in my heart more than when their grain and new wine abound. David makes a choice, a conscious choice, that he will value the joy of God more than the joy of a good meal or the joy of celebrating with alcohol. David is maintaining his strong relationship by valuing the relationship. It's a proclamation. It's an internal decision. I'm going to care more about the joy of the Lord than I'm going to care about the rest of this. In verse 8, the conclusion. In peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, do make me to dwell in safety. David is now finding the peace despite the confusion. Though how people treat him is sometimes confusing, because of his meditation, because of God's presence, because of the joy that God alone can give, because he's come back to that relationship as his core, because he's decided they can say what they want, they can feel what they want, they can do what they want. My hope comes from God now. When he comes back to that place, he goes to sleep in peace. David knows the secret of enduring confusing people through peace with God. And without this, David could have been dragged into a very dark place. I know, because I have failed here before. I've spent days that went into weeks, that went into months, feeling hollow and worthless and doubtful, not because God had abandoned me, but because I chose to worry more about how people treated me than I did about God's promises. And let me be really clear. It's easy to put these words on a screen or tell people that we are somehow supposed to do this. But if it was easy, I wouldn't have spent months in this trap. God promises peace with him, not a life full of people who react rationally or kindly. or who forgive. Not everybody does. Not everybody will. Some people never will. Now, I just want to take a moment to validate some truths. The one person who should have been David's greatest protector and advocate tried to kill him repeatedly. That's damaging. Even when the spear hits the wall instead of David's chest, that's damaging. People come to this church, sometimes only for one day, sometimes for months, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades. Sometimes people come here hurt. Sometimes people come here damaged by others who should have protected them. Pastors, mentors, bosses, parents, spouses, siblings, or even children. People come who have been spiritually attacked, mentally attacked, emotionally attacked, physically attacked, financially attacked. That hurt creates confusion. Who can I trust? How can I trust someone again? How can I be involved with the church again after what happened to me before in that other church? How can I be in a friendship again after what happened to me in that other relationship, that other friendship when I was hurt so badly? How can I do it again when what happened last time hurt so bad? How can God claim to love me when fill in the blank happened? I don't want to make light of your pain. Not now, not ever. That confusion is real, and nobody gets to tell you just forget about it. No one has the right to ask you of that. But David's example is a good one. It isn't God who betrayed us. It's God alone who can sustain us. And David knows what it's like to suffer abuse. But by the grace of the Holy Spirit, we have a record of how he survived it. Psalm 4. Here's the secrets of Psalm 4. And I'm not claiming it's easy. I'm telling you it's possible. To call upon the Lord and remember his faithfulness, verse 1. To acknowledge how we've been wronged, verse 2. To remember that God has called us as his own, verse 3. To be still with the Lord, verse 4. To commit ourselves to offering the sacrifice of righteousness, verse 5. To remember we aren't the supreme example, that God is, verse 6. To take joy in the Lord again, verse 7. And to rest in the safety and peace of God, verse 8. This is how he did it. And I'm not telling you it's easy, I'm telling you it's possible, regardless of how confusing life becomes. Let's pray.
You've been listening to Oasis by the Sea. Thank you so much for joining us today. May God richly bless you until we see you next week at the Oasis.